welcome. Today's video is going to be kind of a recap of our summer vacation from 2021, where we did kind of an East Coast road trip. I had a request for this video, and so I'm going to share with you guys today how that kind of trip went for us. Now, this was my pre-YouTube days, pre-filming days, so mostly what I'm going to have to show you is some pictures of what we did and just some details to share with you guys about how it went and what we saw and what I think you might find interesting if you decide to take this trip. And yeah, so that's what I'm going to share with you guys today. If you're new here, my name is Nikki. I'm a homeschooling mom of 4, and on this channel I like to talk to you about all things secular homeschooling and maybe a little bit about motherhood. And as the summer is coming, because we travel a lot each summer, it's going to kind of turn into a little bit of a travel channel. So I think I'm going to start for the summer. I will be sharing travel tips and travel things on what day did I decide to share those on? So I'll be sharing travel tips and things like that on Wednesdays, and then I'll be sharing my regular homeschool content on Mondays for the next few months. So as a disclaimer, this video got really chatty because I get excited talking about the things that we did. So yeah, you're here for the long haul. So like I said, mostly every summer we take a nice big long vacation, and a lot of times we go out west because we have a family ranch out there, and that's often what we do to visit. But this past one, my grandfather's been doing some work on the ranch, so we haven't been able to visit for a while. And my husband's family, his father is from Philadelphia and his mother is from New York, not New York City, outside of New York, but or outer, what is that called? Upper New York. And so upstate New York, that's what it is called. So yes, so we had been always saying we wanted to get up there and see some of the family that still lives up there, and so we decided that we would accompany my mother-in-law and father-in-law on their vacation up there as well. So it actually was a super fun trip. It was one of our favorites that we've done so far. The kids enjoyed pretty much every minute of it. You know, they are not so hot on long car rides, and coming from Florida, most everywhere we go is a long car ride. But I have some tips and tricks to deal with those long car rides, and I'm going to be sharing those with you coming up in the next few weeks as I prep for this year's summer vacation. But the rest of the vacation was tons of fun, and the kiddos had a blast, and they still talk about it. And my little son, who is about to turn 5 at the end of this month, he still says, "Mommy, when are we going to go back to New York?" because he loved it so much. So I'm going to share kind of like what our itinerary was, and the things that we did, and the things that I think are really good to hit, and kind of some of the educational things that we did along the way that might help you if you are considering a trip like this. So most of the time when we take summer trips, we try to like make the hard travel days at the beginning of the trip, so that we get the hard stuff out of the way and we can have fun. So what we did was we did stop in Savannah, which my husband travels a lot for work, and Savannah is one place that we go very often. So it's it's kind of like our home away from home, we joke and say. For a while, before the pandemic, we were actually going monthly. So it is kind of like our home away from home, and so we couldn't really resist a stop there to eat at some of our favorite restaurants, which like Fire Street, which is mine and my daughter's all-time favorite restaurant, and then Leopold's Ice Cream, which we just cannot get enough of. We love it so much. So we did make a stop there and spend the night there just to kind of fit in some of those things that we hadn't done in a while. And then we carried straight on to Philadelphia. So that was a very long day in the car, and I made it fun by providing like little surprise bags every 2 hours for my kiddos, and that helped a lot to kind of give them something to look forward to other than our arrival, which was going to take a long time. It gave them little things to look forward to help kind of close that time gap. And so we made it into Philadelphia the first, well, technically the second night, and so that was a long drive. We got there late at night. Everybody was tired, but we made it, and our vacation was able to kind of, you know, be a little bit easier from there. So we spent a couple of days in Philadelphia, and we did things like visit the church there that a lot of the presidents attended and a lot of the national conference members went to, and that's a beautiful church. If you guys ever get a chance to go check that out, and it's really cool because you can actually sit in, well, I don't know if they're letting you sit there now, but once upon a time you used to be able to actually sit in the seat that George Washington sat in, which is so cool. So we visited that church, we visited Betsy Ross's house, and my father-in-law got to help raise the flag that day because he is an ex-military member, and so that was just like super fun. And then we toured Betsy Ross's house. I'm a sewer. My older two daughters, they enjoy doing some needlework, so they thought that that was really, really cool because she was a seamstress, and so they could kind of relate to that. And we just had so much fun seeing her house, seeing how kind of small everything is there. There was a play kitchen down in the bottom of Betsy Ross's house that the kids could not get enough of. We had to literally drag them away. Like, we had to pick up some of them and make them leave the area. So it was just really cool. It is a great place for kids. If you're in that area, they really enjoyed that experience. We were going to go to Independence Hall, and unfortunately I booked my reservation because now, if you don't know, if you're not aware, lots and lots of state parks, national parks, state-run things like Independence Hall require reservations, and I made the mistake of rescheduling our reservation for the next week, not the week we were there, but the following week. So we did miss out on that, but we did get to walk around the building and be around the building, and we had lots of conversations and read books and looked at books and things about the Constitution and how it was written and who wrote it and why it's important and all those fun things. Just being there and seeing even just the outside of the building led to so many wonderful discussions about that time and history. We also got to see the Liberty Bell, and they have a nice exhibit there. You do not need so last year you did not need a reservation for that, but they are letting in limited numbers of people, so we did have to wait in line to see that for quite some time. What we did though was we let a couple of people stand in line, and while other members of our party took the kiddos and did something, and then we came back, switched some people out, did it again. So we kind of kept the kids from having to stand in that line by going and getting a snack or playing in the yard. There's a nice big lawn there that they were able to run around in and play. And so, but you will have to wait in that line there if you are going to see that attraction. So be kind of mindful of that. But after we did that, I think we spent 2 days there, and then we took a train from Philadelphia into New York City. Now, I had never done this myself. Most of my travel has been out west. Since we had that family ranch out there, we spent a lot of time out there. I had actually never been up that side of the country except for one time early in my husband and I's relationship. We did go to visit some family in Philadelphia, and my in-laws took me. They weren't my in-laws yet, but they took us to Atlantic City, and we did ride the bus from Atlantic City into New York City. We saw an off-Broadway show, Les Mis, which was incredible, ate pizza, walked into Times Square, and then out of Times Square, and that was my entire New York experience before this trip. So this was really exciting to me and super exciting to my kids. They loved the train. I highly, highly, highly recommend doing the train if you're gonna go up that way. In fact, the next time we do it, we've already talked about only driving as far as Virginia, and then because you can get on the train in Virginia, and it will take you to Philadelphia, it will take you to New York, it will take you to all the places you want to go. So in the future, I think that's what we're gonna do, because my kids loved it. They weren't in the car. They were able to, you're not able to move around a ton, and I'm not sure what the bathroom situation is like, so you might need to consider that if you have some really, really youngs. But it was just, they loved it. They loved every minute of the train, and I'm so glad we chose to do that because they really loved that. We made it into New York. One of my biggest things growing up. I was so in love with American Girl dolls growing up. Like, I have American Girl dolls from before they were American Girl, when they were Pleasant Company, and so that has been just a love of my entire life, basically. And it was always a dream of mine to go to the American Girl store in New York City, and just we never went. That was something that we just didn't do. And so when we said we were going to go to New York, I was like, I have to go to the American Girl store. Like, I just have to go. It just has to be something that we do. And so my in-laws, God bless them, they made the experience amazing for me. My kids all have summer birthdays, May, June, July, and August. Yes, I was due in July, or I was due in June 3 times. So basically we had all the kids had a birthday celebration at American Girl in the restaurant there, and it was really expensive, so just know that going into it. Sorry, battery died on me. I'm back again. So I was talking about our lunch that we had there, our kind of birthday lunch that we had at American Girl, and like I was saying, it is very expensive. Know that going into it. Make sure you're setting a budget for it, but totally worth it if you have an American Girl doll lover. The food was actually exceptional. Like, it was so good. We were kind of expecting it to be like kiddie cafeteria type food, but it was actually really good food. And we had a rainbow birthday cake, which the kids just loved. They thought that was the coolest thing ever, and all kinds of really fun things. So it was definitely an experience that if you have an American Girl doll lover, I highly recommend it. It was so much fun, and it really just made my day and my kids' day, and we still talk about that day all of the time and how much fun it was. And we just spent hours there in that store. If you don't know, there's like all kinds of setups for kind of the different dolls, and it's just 2 floors of dolls, which was just heaven for me and my kiddos. So that's what we did that first day when we got there. And then the next day we did the subway, which I was kind of a little nervous about, but actually wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. We kind of, like my husband said, well, we kind of stuck to like the main, one that tourists use the most. And so, but to me it was actually pretty clean. It wasn't that bad. The kiddos, they didn't like how loud it was. My kiddos are very noise sensitive, and so they didn't like how loud it was, but they really enjoyed riding the subway. So that was a really fun experience for us. But we took the subway and we went out to the Statue of Liberty, and this was so fun, and we learned so much. The kids loved the museum there. We actually ended up spending so much time on the actual island where the statue is that we didn't get very much time on Ellis Island, which is what I was most excited about. So I made a joke to my husband and I was like, I'm coming back here without kids because I really want to see this, and we will have to come back because I did miss out a little bit. We kind of didn't really plan well. I didn't realize that there wasn't going to be a lot of options for lunch, and so we kind of had to cut Ellis Island a little bit short. But the Statue Island, the kids really loved the museum there. One of my favorite pictures of my daughter is her just being amazed at how big the mold for the foot was. And so that was really fun. We spent a lot of time in that museum. They loved that. That was a great day. And then we hit the Natural History Museum before we headed back to Philadelphia. We did not schedule nearly enough time for that. My daughter actually had a pretty hard time with the fact that we didn't get to see a fraction of what is available at the Natural History Museum. So I have promised her that I will take her back one day and we will spend the entire day there. So if you have kiddos that are like mine who love museums, plan on spending the entire day at the Natural History Museum because it was awesome, and we only made it through a couple of exhibits. So that was a real highlight though. We really enjoyed doing that. We also had lunch in Central Park before we headed to the subway. And then we hopped back on the train and headed back down to Philadelphia. where we spent a little time with family, and we also did one last museum there. And honestly, this was probably one of the absolute best museums I've ever been to in my entire life. It is so well laid out. It is so kid friendly. It was so well done. So many cool artifacts. I just loved it, and my kiddos keep asking, when are we gonna go back? It was the American History or American Revolution Museum, but it is the coolest museum. There were so many things that our kids actually got to do and touch and do, you know, like actually be hands-on, which is so cool in a museum. And George Washington's campaign tent from the Civil War, or I'm sorry, from the American Revolutionary War, like the actual tent that George Washington used during the American Revolution is at this museum, and that was so cool. Like, I didn't even know that still existed, that was still a thing, that's something that would have been still around, and that just was the coolest thing. They also had a flags exhibit when we were there. It's probably not there anymore. It was like one of those, you know, traveling ones, but that was really cool to kind of see the progression of the American flag, you know, from the beginning to where it is now. That was a really cool exhibit that my kids were really into. So if you are in Philadelphia, above all else, I highly recommend that American Revolution Museum. It was amazing. They had activities for the kids, like a lot of museums do, which every museum that you go to, make sure you're going up to the counter and asking if they have an activity for kids, because most of the time they have some kind of something, a scavenger hunt or a little booklet for them to fill out or something to do, and a lot of times they will provide like a prize for your kiddos finishing that, whatever your scavenger hunt or whatever book it is. And sometimes it's a really cool thing. This one happened to be like a little coloring book that my kids were into, but sometimes other museums you'll get something that's really cool, like maybe a coin we've gotten before and some other things like that. So definitely any museum you go to, make sure you're asking, do you have some kind of kids program? Because most of the time they do. And it gives the kiddos something to do while they're going through the museum. So that was like the last thing that we did on our trip. We visited with some family, which was a great time, and then we just headed back on home. So those are the things that we did on our trip that I highly recommend. We loved everything that we did. We definitely, oh, I totally forgot to mention, when we were in New York City, the Harry Potter store had just opened like the week or two before we got there. And so we got to go see this 3-story Harry Potter store that my kids just thought was the coolest thing, and honestly it is like super cool. Check it out. It was quite the adventure. Like we went there and then we were hungry, so we went and had lunch, and we came back and we realized that there was like this virtual line that if we had put our name in before we went and ate lunch, we probably would have been able to go in after lunch. But we didn't. We had some kids were melting down, and so we had to take everybody back to the hotel. Grandma and Grandpa stayed with the littlest ones, and we took the oldest ones and my brother-in-law back to the Harry Potter store. We get there, and we get off the subway, and there's fire trucks, and we're like, what are these fire trucks? There was a false alarm at the Harry Potter store, and they weren't letting anybody in. So then we had to kill another like hour, which we went and saw the Macy's store, which was just really cool, you know, to see that. But on the upper levels of the Macy's store, they still have the original escalators, and they're made of wood. Like, they're wood escalators. It was crazy, so cool. If you like historical things like that, I mean, that was just like totally random, but it was super cool. And but we made it to the Harry Potter store. We got in right before they closed, but we got to see everything we wanted to see, and it was awesome, and we loved that. So that was another thing we did in New York City, but I forgot about that. You can make silly faces or something. All right, now make a cute face. Wait, pause, pause, pause. It's almost here. It's almost here. Fran, look at Mom.
Thank you.
Got it.
But anyways, we wrapped up our trip. We headed home. The drive home is always a little less fun than the drive going out. But we made it home and it was a great trip, and I highly recommend doing it if you get a chance. We love traveling with our kiddos and showing them the country. They learn more on these little trips and going to these museums than they learn at our house. Retain more of what they're learning out there. So yeah, that is our trip. If you have any other questions, please let me know down in the comments. I'm happy to answer them if I can remember what we did, or if I have any more details, or try to point you in the right direction. And while you're down there, I hope you will subscribe to this channel, ring that notification bell, and give this video a thumbs up. If you want to keep up with what we're going to be doing for this summer's vacation, which I'm not ready to share with you yet, I have a video coming up, honestly because we haven't quite finished ironing out the details, but if you want to keep up with that, head on over to Instagram at Homeschool-ology, and I'll be sharing kind of little tidbits along the way of what we're doing. And of course, when I get back from that trip, I'll be sharing everything we did here on YouTube. So I hope you will stick around, and I will talk to you guys again soon. Bye!